All right, a developing story out of Pakistan where the military claims to have shot down 2 Indian jets over the disputed territory of Kashmir. Pakistani officials say it's a retaliation for an Indian airstrike earlier in the week. They also claim to have arrested 2 Indian pilots. However, India says it only lost 1 fighter jet, and adding that their military was also able to shoot down a Pakistani jet. Now, tensions between the 2 nuclear powers have escalated dramatically since February 14th. That was when there was a suicide bombing that killed some 40 Indian soldiers. It also was the first major conflict since the 1971 war over the disputed territory of Kashmir. RT's Ashlee Banks is joining us now with more on this story. Ashlee.
Earlier today, Pakistan's Air Force carried out airstrikes along the so-called line of control, and what officials say was an effort to demonstrate the country is capable of defending itself from India. Now, the line of control is the border between the Indian and Pakistani parts of the former state of Kashmir. According to a spokesman for the Pakistani Armed Forces, shortly after the airstrikes took place, 2 Indian planes that entered Pakistani airspace were shot down. 1 aircraft fell on India's side of Kashmir and the other fell on Pakistan's territory. And the pilot from that plane was reportedly captured by Pakistani officials. An Indian External Affairs Ministry spokesman has acknowledged that 1 pilot is missing and a jet had been lost. Meanwhile, Pakistan's Prime Minister confirmed the strike.
2 Indian MiGs crossed the border into our territory. We shot them down. I also want to confirm that the pilots are in our custody.
This is the latest in heightened tensions between the 2 countries. Earlier this month, a suicide car bomb detonated in India-controlled Kashmir, killing more than 40 security officers. The terror group Army of Muhammad claimed responsibility for that attack. As a result, Pakistan received international criticism for its failure to crack down on terrorist groups operating in its country. India then took matters into its own hands. On Tuesday, the country's Air Force conducted airstrikes against a militant camp on Pakistan's land. Now, according to Indian officials, the attack killed a large number of terrorists, trainers, and senior commanders belonging to the Army of Muhammad. Shortly after the airstrike, a small anti-Pakistan protest was held in New Delhi, where they expressed retaliation.
Today, our nation's forces showed that whoever dares to clash with us will suffer dearly. Anyone who dares to look at us, we will hit them in their homes.
However, Pakistani officials dispute this claim, and Imran Khan, the country's prime minister, thinks the 2 countries should talk.
If you want any kind of dialogue on terrorism, we are ready for that. But I would like to say this to you again, that right now, better sense should prevail. We should sit down and sort out our issues with dialogue.
U.S. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo has urged both countries to exercise restraint and avoid escalation. France, Australia, and China are asking the countries to do the same. For quite a while now, Kashmir has been a sensitive topic for both countries, and since 1947, the countries have engaged in 3 wars over the region. But this is the first time India has used airstrikes in Pakistan since 1971. Being that both countries are nuclear powers, many are concerned tensions could lead to a potential outbreak of war in South Asia. Reporting in the newsroom, Ashlee Banks, RT.
All right, for a little bit of perspective into how the UK plays into all of this and Prime Minister Theresa May's reaction to it, I spoke earlier with former UK MP George Galloway for his take on this and on Brexit.
The UK is deeply concerned about rising tensions between India and Pakistan and urgently calls for restraint on both sides to avoid further escalation. We're in regular contact with both countries, urging dialogue and diplomatic solutions to ensure regional stability.
George, your take on these events happening?
Well, it's a very grave escalation as President Trump is embracing the little rocket man in Hanoi. Here are 2 nuclear-armed forces now openly slagging it out, verbally and in military terms. And the pictures of the captured Indian pilots are, of course, on a loop in the Indian media, stoking tensions still higher. The success of the Pakistani military in bringing down these jets, is encouraging militant forces on their side of the line. It's a very, very grave matter. And you'd think the entire world would be moving as one to try and bring it under control. But as you say, people like us have got more important things to talk about, like a backstop in the Brexit negotiations in 6 counties in the north of Ireland. But you're right to highlight this Kashmir question is another British blunder, a crime and a blunder. The way that Britain scuttled from India in 1947 and partitioned the country without making any attempt to ascertain the democratic wishes of the people in the territories being partitioned is coming home to roost all these decades later in the disputed area of Kashmir, which is an overwhelmingly Muslim area that wanted to join Pakistan on partition, but the Hindu Maharaja, imagine the word, Maharaja with a jewel in his turban, he wanted to go to India, so to India it went. And it's never been accepted. They've been fighting over it ever since. India has 600,000 soldiers occupying the tiny area of Kashmir, one of the most beautiful areas in the world, paradise, actually a living hell.
Now, George, you mentioned Kim Jong-un and President Trump meeting, obviously about denuclearization of the peninsula. But what about denuclearization here? All eyes are on that summit. But let me ask you this. Is the world closer to a possible nuclear war now between Pakistan and India? Forget the U.S. and Little Rocket Man.
Well, we're in a war. That war might escalate, and that war might escalate to an exchange of so-called tactical battlefield nuclear weapons, which again could escalate into nuclear arms fired at each other's cities. It's quite terrifying, and it has erupted apparently out of nowhere for most of the news media, who are entirely oblivious to the 70 years or more of history in this. It just goes to show where there's no oil involved, where there's no real geostrategic interest for the superpowers, well, these things just got left to fester and later poison and erupt. And that's exactly what's happening here. So I'd suggest that everyone, Russia, America, China, all quickly get moving to try and bring this situation under control. Imran Khan, very calm I thought he looked. He said, let's talk about this. But that's not what Modi on the Indian side, just weeks away from a general election, is interested in doing. Wars are good for political business, as we know, Manila.
Yes, George, we have certainly covered that quite a bit, especially between you and I. And now let's talk about voting. As you just said, voting is underway over on your homestead down in Westminster. Downing Street is busy voting on, what to do next. The Prime Minister has gotten out of the driver's seat. How do you predict MPs will vote now that they're steering the ship? She says, I don't want to, you have 1 or 2 options. I'm not doing this. It's up to you.
Well, actually, as I predicted to you yesterday, I feel more strongly about this today. It might be that the hard-line Brexiteers around a very 19th century gentleman called Jacob Rees-Mogg, who's referred to as the member for the 19th century, they're beginning rapidly to soften their line. They may go into the lobbies and support Theresa May's Brexit deal that they rejected overwhelmingly not a month ago, because they are looking at the possibility of no Brexit at all if the Prime Minister's Brexit goes down.
Right.
So we'll know on the 12th of March.
And now, George, what about Ms. Merkel and Macron? They are meeting. Macron's office put out a statement saying that no matter what happens with Brexit, they will evoke the French-German defense partnership, which they just renewed a few weeks ago. It's a bilateral defense deal. We know that. How does that play into Brexit?
Well, I hope they take time on the sidelines to work out a form of words that will resolve this dispute with the British, because it is only words we're talking about here. If you say backstop with no time limitation, then the chances of Theresa May getting it through Parliament are severely reduced. It oughtn't to be beyond the best diplomatic brains to come up with another form of words on that. But Franco-German cooperation is a good thing. I'm very happy to see it. If France and Germany want to merge their countries as well as their armed forces, that's entirely their business. But it's not for us. As I've said to you before, we have a bad experience with European armies, those we fought against and those we fought alongside.
All right, George, we'll leave it right there. Thank you for chiming in on all these various important topics. George Galloway, thank you.
Hey YouTube, thanks for checking out our channel. We hope you enjoyed the video. We have tons of content for you just like this. For more of RT America's one-of-a-kind news and analysis, be sure to subscribe and never stop questioning more.